Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another roundtable here at the Hockey Writers. I am your host, Matthew Zator, and I'm joined by Jacob Strozyk, covers the Buffalo Sabres. You saw him on the season preview show. We are here to do a takeaways of the prospect tournament that just wrapped up this past weekend. Talk about some prospects, which I always love talking about. So,
Yeah,
Jacob, how's it going? And I know you were there at that prospect tournament, so you have some live look-in. So, what did you see that stood out to you from the prospects of this very, very exciting pool?
yeah, there was a lot going on from the first game that was on Friday. Was probably it was odd because they looked a little bit shaky to start out, but you could tell that they were all just kind of getting to know each other. But
Mhm.
they still managed to score 6 goals, so it's not like they were short on anything offensive. Uh, there was a lot going on in the second day, which was on Saturday, where it was kind of a similar situation, but they looked a little bit more refined. Defense
Mhm.
was better, the goaltending was better, and the offense was still good. They scored another 6 goals. And then the most recent game, which was a little bit more unfortunate, but they had a hiccup right at the start where Matt Savoie got injured, so that didn't help
Ugh.
them. And they didn't have their top guys in Kulik, Rosen, Kisakov wasn't in there, Nuchev wasn't there. So it's a lot of scoring power that they didn't have. And then they got shut out 3-0 on their last game. But the team itself didn't look bad. They still had, I think it was like 35 shots. So there was a lot to take away and a lot of good and a little bit of bad and some just why would that player do that? So I had fun watching it. What do you want first? You want me to go into like who I noticed or who didn't notice? What do you want first?
Let's go with this. Let's go with the good news. Let's go with the
Okay.
standouts that the prospects that impressed you.
Probably one of the biggest standouts for me was Nikita Novikov. He's a former sixth round pick defenseman, and he's got that size to him, and he was using his size a lot when he was playing defense and when he was up in the offensive zone. He had, I think it was a total of 4 or 5 assists
Hmm.
for the entire tournament. So he was on it for everything. There were maybe a handful of moments where I went, probably shouldn't have made that play, but he's a kid and he's going to make those mistakes. I was more impressed with him than I was disappointed by like a long shot. There
Hmm.
wasn't really a moment where I was sitting there going, get Novikov off the ice. He's killing us out there. I wanted him out there because I liked what he was giving.
Hmm.
So he was probably one of my big ones. Another one, Tyson Kozak. He's not that big flashy player. I talked about him in my top 10 prospects about a month ago. And I'm still really high on him and what he does because he does all the little things. He's
Hmm.
not flashy. And he did have a nice highlight reel goal in there. But, in general, he's that steady two-way center. He'll block shots. He'll break up plays. And the thing that stood out to me most was his faceoffs. I think he only lost 10 faceoffs the whole tournament. He was just ridiculous in the dot, and he was out there for every single situation: power play, penalty kill, even strength. He was probably one of my favorite people to watch. Besides the last like big standout for at least the first 2 games because he didn't play much in the third one, but was Matt Savoie. He is noticeably faster, noticeably more skilled, and noticeably a better scorer than any of the other prospects in the Sabre system, as well as any of the other prospects that they played against. It wasn't even close. He looked like an NHLer playing against a bunch of junior players at times. There was a couple of, minor hiccups, including the injury, but
Hmm.
again, there was never that time where I wanted Savoy to be off the ice. You wanted him on there because he was still playing defense. He was playing a two-way game, and he was just scoring some ridiculous highlight reel goals to go with it.
Yeah, Savoy has always been one of my favorites to watch, and I was happy that he went to a system that probably will use his talents offensively. The way it's looking for the Sabres going forward. So it's unfortunate that he got injured, but he's going to have a good chance of being in the NHL pretty soon. One way or another, I don't know, how big of a role he'll get right off the bat, but yeah, I'm excited to see him in the NHL as well. What about disappointments? I mean, these tournaments, it's kind of hard to say, one guy doesn't stand out, whatever. But were you expecting to see something from someone that you never saw?
Yeah, there was a couple that really just made me go, God, I wanted more. And Benson was really one of them. He looked nervous. He looked like he was playing nervous. He looked like he was playing slow. He wasn't really moving his feet like he normally is. And the speed just didn't look like it was there. Another thing, he was trying to force passes through. He was trying to force shots through, and he wasn't playing the game that he normally does. It looked like he was just trying too hard to impress and that he was nervous. It's not that he played bad. It's that I just wanted to see more. And I think a lot of other people wanted to see more. He did have a goal, and I think he did have another assist or two in there, but it was nothing highlight reel or noticeable. It was just a simple play. And it was more an after effect that he got the point or the goal more than he made it happen, because that's something you would expect out of Benson, being a play driving type forward, especially amongst, a prospect group. So he was probably the biggest name as far as like not a disappointment, quote unquote, would go. Another one would be a recent draftee, Scott Ratzlaff, the goaltender. Again, shaky. Shaky is just probably the best word I can use to describe him. Both games he started, he got scored on the first shot on goal, and he just looked rattled. He had a handful of steady moments, but every goal that went in past him, there was just some weak ones. He should have had them. It wasn't like screened. It was all clear shot. It was a slow shot or otherwise. And there was really only one or two good goals scored against them. The rest of them were just fairly weak. And I know it's a lot to expect out of a very young, recently drafted goalie who'd only played juniors up to this point, and he's going up against, high-end prospects. But as someone who was expected to be the starter to a camp invite, you want to see a little bit more than weak goals floating past a future possible goaltender in your system. Besides him, probably the other that I really wanted to see something out of was Alexander Kisakov. Besides the one goal that he had and then another really cool move that he did, he was invisible. You didn't really notice that he was there for any point that he was on the ice, really. It was just a whole lot of nothing. He got laid out a couple of times. That's the only other times you probably noticed him, is when he just got hit and obliterated because he had his head down. But, it was for somebody who's expected to be in the AHL again, because he was in the AHL last year. You want him to be a scoring player and you want him to be a difference maker. He just wasn't that. And it's kind of upsetting to see that going into this year when he's supposed to play a bigger role.
Yeah, but I mean, like I say, these prospects tournaments you maybe take it with a grain of salt sometimes, but you do want to see these guys stand out. Sometimes they don't. I mean, it's happened in a lot of these tournaments. They don't do very well in these tournaments, and then they go to main camp, and then all of a sudden you're like, why weren't you doing this? And I mean, it's better they're doing it at main camp, I guess, but yeah, I think it's a good jump off point for a lot of these prospects. They do it. Some of them get sent back to junior. I mean, right away, they don't get moved to main camp, but a lot of the guys you're talking about will probably get a chance to play maybe some preseason games and actually be with the veteran group, which I think is a lot more valuable for them, because they'll be able to play against that higher end, see what they need to still work on. So but it's great to still watch these tournaments and see where their development is, right?
Yeah, it's not so much that, if they had a bad tournament, that's going to define what they're going to be or anything. It's more like this type of thing is more of a warm up for training camp and for preseason, especially for those higher end players. It's just meant to get their legs moving, get them on the ice, play some hockey, and see where they're kind of at, so the coaches probably know what they're doing. If they produce well, cool, that's more fun for the fans. But if they don't, it's nothing to really worry about.
Yeah, and I know in Detroit, everyone's worried about Sebastian Kosek because he got lit up in Traverse City. I mean, goaltenders, I think it's even, you got to take it even less of something, right? But yeah, it's still exciting to watch for the fans. It's just hockey on TV, even though it's on YouTube or these like lesser, you're just watching the in arena feed on TV, but or on the computer. But you were there live, so you were able to see a bit more of a different perspective them on the ice. So yeah, it's going to be fun to see them in main camp, see where they are at, and especially hopefully Savoie's injury isn't too serious that he can play in main camp, right? So was there any indication on how serious the injury was, or is that too early?
I mean, not particularly. From what I was seeing on Twitter and from what I saw, he didn't come back onto the bench, but as soon as he was injured, it looked like they shut him down because Kevin Adams kind of got up and left from his spot and went down towards the locker room. And then they were both up sitting back in their booth spot, like right next to each other by the time the second period started. So I'm willing to bet it was more of a precautionary shutdown because he was holding his shoulder when he went into the wall, and it was the same shoulder that he injured previously. So I'm guessing it's more precautionary. If it was more serious, I'd be willing to bet he wouldn't be sitting up in a press box.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, you don't want these guys getting seriously hurt in a showcase. You don't want them to get hurt at all at any point, but especially in a meaningless tournament that you'd rather them be playing in preseason and in training camp, regular training camp. So yeah, it probably was precautionary. We'll see as time goes on here. But thanks, Jacob, for coming on, doing a little bit of a takeaways on this prospect tournament, because like everyone has been watching this Sabres prospect pool, I'm sure, quite closely, because they got a lot of interesting players and a lot of exciting players that were drafted this past season and the previous season. So, I'm sure everyone's interested. And so thanks for giving your thoughts.
Yeah, anytime. I know there's a handful of players I didn't even get to mention. So there's still a lot of excitement left.
Lots of stuff coming up. So make sure you're checking out all the coverage at thehockeywriters.com for all Sabres prospects, Sabres coverage of the preview stuff that's coming up. Check out the season preview show that was released, I believe it was about a week or two ago.
About a week ago.
Yeah, about a week ago. So definitely check that out. And also we'll be doing roundtables throughout the season, checking in with Jacob on the Sabres. So keep up, throughout the season for that. And until next time, we'll see you on another episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable.